Good afternoon. Nayaswami Riman here with my companion, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, explained by Paramahansa Yogananda and edited by his disciple Swami Kriyananda. Today we're on stanza 27, and I think Omar's tongue is no longer in his cheek exactly, but it's kind of close. So I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to have ask Swami Kriyananda to sing it. Okay, so this is quatrain 27 of the Rubaiyat. Myself when young did eagerly frequent doctor and saint, and heard great argument about it and about, but evermore came out by the same door as I went. So bear with me as I now find
Myself when young did eagerly frequent doctor and saint, and heard great argument about it and about, but evermore came out by the same door as in I went. This stanza of the Rubaiyat, ordinarily interpreted as a sarcastic reference to the vanity of intellectual discussion on life's mysteries, is really a profound tribute to Omar Khayyam's religious teachers. This statement is proved by the first line of the next stanza, number 28, quote, "With them the seed of wisdom did I sow," end quote.
And so, you see, let's talk about this frequenting doctor and saint and hearing great argument. It's an interesting statement, interesting, at least to me, for several reasons. Lahiri Mahashai, the progenitor of the spread of Kriya Yoga in the latter part of the 19th century from Benares, counseled his disciples not to engage in useless religious speculation. At the same time, Lahiri expounded upon the Bhagavad Gita and its meaning. And some of his key and chief disciples wrote commentaries based on his explanations. So it's a fine line, you see. Hanging out with great teachers, with, of course, better yet, true saints. You know, saints are just not that common. Wise people, perhaps, spiritual teachers, certainly, very common. But there is the term satsang, which is to say fellowship with truth, a Sanskrit term that in its ordinary day-to-day use by yogis and people like you and I refer to the value and importance of being together with like-minded spiritual aspirants, with other devotees. Its deeper meaning is where, as a article or something Yogananda wrote, I think it was the subtitle, he said, "In what slums is your mind roaming?" In other words, true satsang is between the ears. What your thoughts are, where they go, what do your eyes look at, and what sort of captures your attention as you go through the day. So true satsang is the company you keep in your heart, in other words. And thus it is practices like chanting inwardly throughout the day, the practice known in India as japa, the practice of practicing the presence of God as it's sometimes known with Christians, which is to chant the name of Christ or God, or dialoguing conversations with God, as one erstwhile famous author titled a popular book in the series. Reminds me of a story Swami Kriyananda told. He was down in Big Sur, California, beautiful place along the coast, I was born and raised just north of there, and so Big Sur is something I treasure in my heart and my life's experiences. A beautiful symbol of the wild coastlines of the world. Anyway, he went down there for whatever reason, Swami did, and he was in I think a cafe or something, a little hole in the wall, which was all they had back in those days. And so he got in a conversation with the barkeep or the cafe owner, whatever he was, big burly man, big paws, and so they got into a spiritual conversation, and Swami mentioned in passing that perhaps he had known in his life, I don't know, half a dozen or a dozen saints. And this big burly man said, "Sheikh, you just met the 13th or the 12th or the 8th or something." And Swami chuckled to himself. Probably he didn't just meet that one. As Yogananda and other sages have put it over the millennia, he who says he knows doesn't, he who says he doesn't, he who knows, knows. It's a great blessing to know a saint. I think it was the Adi Shankaracharya in India long ago in the 10th century AD who perhaps was the one who made the comment that the greatest blessing in all three worlds, physical, mental, and spiritual, is to have a true guru. Swami Kriyananda later in life mentioned he was talking to the then president of India, Kalam, I forget his full name, and Kalam asked Swamiji what did he think of India, and Swami said, "Well, I understand that India needs to put itself in the ranks of the great nations of the world. It needs to improve itself on a material level, and that it will never really lose the depths of its spirituality." But he had to confess that compared to his early years in the late 50s, early 60s in India, during which time he met a number of very great saints, he wasn't encountering them in later years on later visits. And so Westerners like myself, who in their youth traveled to India hoping to meet great saints, I remember having at least one occasion walking on the streets of India in the 70s, someone coming up to me, grabbing my hand and looking at my palm and pretending to read my palm, snake charmers and all that sort of image of India. There's definitely a lot of strange things in India, or used to be, but saints are not that common. And most of the spiritual teachers, most of the even sincere saintly people are not avatars, are not fully liberated. Their power to help people is usually confined to a few disciples, or maybe they're a popular spiritual teacher who writes books and so forth, but it's a great blessing. So what do we do? Do we run off to every passing spiritual teacher who comes by our particular town or city? Nowadays everything's on the internet, so that's another way. A lot of people like this fellow Sadhguru. I've watched a few of his things, but I'll tell you in this recording I'm not all that impressed with that particular fellow. But anyway, we find our own. So it's better than a lot of other things. And I've just been listening the last few days to some videos by I think a very sincere fellow, David Goodman, who has helped popularize the life and teachings of Ramana Maharshi, whose ashram I have visited now in my lifetime 2 times, and I'd like to go back to the holy mountain of Arunachala, the mountain that embodies Lord Shiva. So I think from the basis of one's own genuine spiritual commitment, and my guru Paramahansa Yogananda and his lineage, and my teacher Swami Kriyananda, they form the heart of my spiritual quest. But from that heart I can appreciate and enjoy the teachings of others who are more or less in alignment. I did watch something the other day. It was a prophecy channel by these born-again Christians, and it was curious. I felt their goodwill, of course, but everything's so outward in signs and history, and so there was no mention of communion with Christ, but that's okay, that's their way. But we should do, and modern technology allows us to commune with saintly people. This is what they're talking about. Ultimately, though, the communion lies in the temple of the self, in the temple within each one of us. And as something of as someone who enjoys spiritual teachings and the nuances thereof, we do need, if you do, like you do need to be aware of when you cross the line into useless theological speculation. When you feel the upliftment in your heart, and your heart is genuinely seeking upliftment, that's really that's what you want to look for. Okay? Pride easily creeps in with knowing all sorts of Sanskrit terms and all sorts of yoga postures and stuff like that. So you must guard the pride of the heart. Pride comes before the fall. And when you think what you're doing is really popular or really good, or you get high praise, that's your enemy. Praise is your enemy. Okay? So I remember the story with which I'll close of a guru, I don't remember who it was now, who, when told that his biggest critic died, shed tears of grief, saying, "My best friend has died." The ability to handle criticism is surely, unquestionably, the benchmark, the litmus test of the degree to which one has transcended ego identification. So keep company with the saints and the doctors frequent, and hear the argument of the soul. God bless you. Take care. Be good. Be wise. Be truthful. And we'll see you tomorrow.